Good morning and happy Easter to everyone. Thank you for coming. I know it's almost anticlimactic to come after the fact, but we never had a chance to finish up. Not only was what would have been the last session was Holy Week, and then there was still some Holy Week reflections to go through. Hello to everyone watching online. We're going to start with a prayer, and then we'll have some quiet time. And we're going to keep it simple today. Today's also a chance for you to just bring up anything you would like to bring up from the last several weeks. So we're just going to do a bit of review of the last session, which was on patience, which I know we all love patience. And then we'll talk about the Holy Week. But depending on how the conversation goes, we might just go into sort of a review of all the weeks, depending on what you would like to talk about. Okay? So let's start with a prayer, and then about maybe 3 minutes of quiet. Whatever is the best practice for you, that maybe you learned something from one of the weekly practices. So let's start with a prayer. O God, be all my love, all my hope, all my striving. Let my thoughts and words flow from you, my daily life be in you, and every breath I take be for you. Amen. Amen. And that was from John Cassian, and he's one of the church fathers that taught meditation way back, hundreds of years ago. So he's a great person to read up on. This comes from one of his writings called the Conferences. Okay. So let's take about 3 minutes, and just whichever is the best way for you, relax yourself, of course, and close your eyes, and then breathe in deeply and hold it, and then breathe out slowly, let it go. And again, whether it's release or whether it's visualization or whatever works for you. And when you're ready, just take your deep breaths, open your eyes. Okay. So, patience. That was the last session that we had for Holy Week. And anyone have any comments about patience? These are some of the things we did talk about for those who were able to be here. I don't know how many, I know some of you were not able to be here at the last session. And Joyce, we're so glad you're feeling better. Yeah. So patience. Who has lots of patience? You know, of all the things that we strive for, you know, in terms of kindness and generosity, and I think we do hit those at some points. We can be very generous, we can be very kind and all that. But patience can be a little more of a challenge. Life seems to push us all the time. And as a result of that, our outlook is one of always being on the go. You know, that's why the drive-thrus do so well. You know, with the fast foods, and that's why they call it fast foods also. But patience, you know, some of you know I like to cook. And preparation for a meal can take 2-3 hours. Cutting things up, getting stuff ready, marinating if you have to marinate. You can't rush the work, you know. Maybe some better cooks can do it quicker than I, but patience has to come in when you're preparing a meal, or if you're getting your house ready for guests, and you're going to clean, and maybe put away some things, or put out some things, and get stuff ready. And if they're staying overnight, get the guest bathroom cleaned and ready. Like, there's a lot of things that have to happen that you can't rush. Someone's pregnant. I mean, that's a good one. You can't rush that either. It has to, right? You can't rush it. It may feel like it at sometimes, like, when's this going to be over? But there's certain things we can't rush. And we are forced just by the nature of whatever it is, we have to be patient. So we talked about patience as tolerating, someone said long-suffering, enduring, not react negatively. Some comment came out that we can be the problem, depending on what it is. Expectations, frustration, patience with ourselves. Sometimes we might be more patient with someone else, perhaps, but patience with ourselves can sometimes be a challenge. Patience with faith. Things have to be in God's time. Comments, okay, as we kind of go through that. Any comments on patience? And Joyce, and again, for the benefit of those online and for good sound, we'll use those.
It is very difficult to be very patient when you're sitting or lying in a hospital bed. I did this for 9 days. I prayed a lot. I prayed for God's patience. I know He was with me all the time. And I talked to Him, and He did give me patience. And you just have to tolerate it, and sleep a lot.
Right.
That helped.
Yeah.
Sleeping a lot. If you ever get into my situation, remember sleep, remember tolerance, remember talking to God, talking to your best pastor, who comes and sees you a lot, which is wonderful. So there are some good things about it too. That's about it. You just have to, like I said, be tolerant and wait for God to help you get better.
Yes. Yeah, a hospital stay as you had. Sometimes the days probably would feel very long. Some of the days. Very quiet and noisy at the same time, because hospitals are never quiet. There's always people coming in and going out, checking you. And the best is when once I was in hospital, they had to wake me up to give me a sleeping pill. Like, that always really makes a lot of sense, right? But that's, anyway. Anyone else want to comment? And how does patience, the concept of patience, if we want to cultivate patience, in what positive way can it add to your life, to your faith, to your relationships? Okay? Yeah. Elodie?
For many years, I considered myself a patient person. And I think that God has a way of kind of showing us what it is that we really need to work on, what's next for us. And lately, I've become incredibly impatient. And for me, it's heartbreaking. And as I've been looking at it, I realize that for me, impatience really almost becomes synonymous with intolerance.
Okay.
Where you think like, this is the way things should be. And if things aren't in the way that I think, if people aren't acting the way I think, if the world isn't operating, then it's a very, very, I think it's one of the hardest things I've been given of late. It's to really look at this lack of patience and And I love the idea, as I read it on the board, about that it also means that you need to have patience with yourself.
Yeah.
And sometimes, just recognizing your issues, what you need to work on, sometimes that's like the best first step, But then it is just prayer, because you come up against it where you say, I can't fix this. I cannot change this. Lord, you're going to have to change me.
Yeah. So prayer.
Yes.
So within it, God needs to be part of the cultivating. Again, whether it's patience or generosity or any kind of compassion, whatever, whether for others or for yourself, God has to be involved. We can't do it by ourselves. Oh, we think we can, and to some degree we may achieve it. But ultimately, God needs to be part of the working in our lives. Just like in relationships, we need God in those relationships to be the third person if it's a relationship, one-on-one relationship with someone. And again, everything is affected. That image of the living compass and the quadrants. When something affects our heart, it affects other parts of us. And then it's not just heart, of course. It's deeper than that. But it's our soul, mind, strength. If something's out of balance, we know it. We don't always want to admit it, but we know it. We feel it. And that's when we really need to call on God and tap into our faith. John?
I, by nature, am extremely impatient. And it's usually with other people. And I find that I can really experience patience when I'm out in creation, in nature. And when I have the beauty of creation around me, all that frustration goes away. For example, and my wife says, I don't understand it, that I can spend all day fly fishing in a stream and not catching anything, but I'm totally patient and totally relaxed.
Right. So what's the difference? What's the difference in that time with creation? Okay, that is the difference between how you approach it, that patience, versus someone else, a person.
Well, I think when you're in nature, it's something that's immutable. You can't change. You accept what it is and what it offers you. And so, as opposed to with people, you try to get them to do something differently, or hurry up, or react in a different way. But in nature, you accept it what it is and the beauty of what it is, and you go with it. Even if you're on a boat in a storm, you kind of accept what creation is and brings you.
So you don't accept nature to be anything other than it is, but people, you expect them to be different.
Yeah.
Well, part of our nature is to try to change people, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right? We try to change other people, or we reflect our own image onto other people at times.
We expect them to act the way we would act.
We want them to act the way we would. And that's not the way it is. So how do we cultivate patience with people in a way that, like, John's a photographer, and I know he takes beautiful pictures, hummingbirds and other things, but you need patience. You need patience, again, especially with photography, to wait for the right moment, and hopefully that right bird comes in there, that you could snap that picture quick enough and get it. How do we cultivate patience with people let's be honest, sometimes you want to smack them. Okay? No, I'm being honest here. There are people you just want them to just be quiet and just fall in line. However, we're all individuals. And we all have our own likes, dislikes, we all have our own agendas, which is part of it too, which makes committees very interesting, right? You want to say something, Joyce?
Yes, yes, I do. A lot with the patience that I needed. It also increased my feeling of peace.
Feeling of
Feeling of peace?
Peace.
Feeling of peace, okay. So that time, those 9 days in the hospital, did have an impact on you, other than, of course, wanting to get better. The time that we are sometimes forced to have, it was. Oh, I'm trying to remember where it is now. But Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God. Sometimes situations that are beyond our control can help us focus in different ways. Again, well, I can't be sick because I have too much to do, right? I can't be sick, or I can't be off my foot, or I can't, whatever. However, sometimes, sometimes things happen in God's time, and how we use situations to our benefit, Maybe sometimes you can, maybe other times you can't. But when you're forced to be off your feet and be in a hospital bed, or just have to, recoup from something at home, and you can't be out and about running around and doing all the things you want to do, it does make you see things with different eyes, right? Joyce, right? Any comments on that? Gail?
For me, when I was in the hospital, it was beyond my control. And every time I hit a place where I don't know which way to turn, I tell myself to let go and let God take over. Mm-hmm. I can't manage it, I can't control it, and I wait, not exactly patiently, but I wait for God's answer to whatever is that block that's stopping me, or in my case, getting out of the hospital bed and doing something. I understand what Joyce went through. So.
Yeah.
And it's much harder to be in the bed than it is outside of the bed. As a nurse, I don't like being in the bed.
So, in patience, on page 54, and that's where that Psalm verse was. Having patience takes practice, and being patient with ourselves as we practice is essential. So we have to have patience with ourselves as we try to have patience with other people. It has to be both ways. What are ways that we can develop the patience with other people? Because that seems to be, I think, more the challenge, perhaps. I mean, there's also a challenge with ourselves, yes, that's there too. But how do we practice patience and cultivate that as part of who we are? Because the whole thing about the last several weeks, cultivating the fruits of the Spirit, and we couldn't do every fruit of the Spirit, but to cultivate it means it's to become integrated into your life. Just like roots that grow from when you plant some seeds and they sprout and they grow and they become integrated into you. So cultivating the patience. What are ways, and you may have someone in mind perhaps as you're thinking about people you have to have patience with. It might be a friend, it might be a relative, it might be your spouse or a partner or whoever, your children. And I know it doesn't matter what age the children are, right? They could be 60, 70 years old sometimes. You just have to have patience with them. So let's talk about that for a few moments. Joyce? Okay.
I do have something to add to this too. My sister, my
your sister, yes.
I learned to have patience with my sister while all this was going on. Because she would look at me, and she lives here, and she would look at me and she would say, well, you look a little better today. Or she would say, you know, I don't think you're going to be able to drive for about another week or two. Now this one is laughing because she knows my sister.
I know your sister too.
Yes, you know my sister too. And I needed to learn patience with her because she was doing so much for me. Every day she was with me, calling me or coming to the house or coming to the rehab place. And it's a part of her I have never seen before. A part of her I've never needed before. And I have thanked her so much from the bottom of my heart. And I don't know if, I probably will never stop thanking her.
Would you say your relationship is a little stronger
Our
after?
relationship is a lot stronger.
So sometimes even what can be a terrible situation can produce some good fruit.
Definitely,
Okay.
definitely.
John?
I think it would be important to schedule a timeout so that you can later come back and approach that which makes you impatient with refreshment and renewal and a different way of looking at the situation.
Because impatience can sometimes cause us to say something
Exactly.
that maybe we wish we didn't.
I mean, I think among spouses, one thing that works is if your spouse is making you very frustrated and impatient, walk away and go off and do something else for a couple hours, then come back and you have a new approach and outlook
Yeah.
on that, which is a problem.
Melody?
Yeah. Relating to that and thinking of the two last circumstances that really I was ashamed of, for my feeling, my response. Who is this woman? I see that it's really important now that when it's on someone's radar, to pay attention, to really notice the early signs, the early thoughts, the early feelings as they start to arise. Because that's when I can best interrupt them. And recognize it for what it is. I know what's about to come, so I stop it and then perhaps say a prayer or say a thought,
Okay.
thy will, not my will, whatever it is, to interrupt it, because once it catches hold of me, then justifications come and, you just really just jump the track. At least I do.
Yeah.
And so that's where I'm finding it, is that I catch it really fast and early.
Now, were you doing that before the Lenten study, or has this sort of helped move you in that direction?
Well, this is kind of a recent thing for me to see this. It's more of I'm seeing it's more intolerance of other people and how they act or what they do. And so I just think that the more we do stuff like this, for me, it's a stirring of the pot, and we're getting to kind of look into the well a little bit and see. And the more we do that, then the more we see we've got plenty to work on. So if we change ourselves, we don't need to change the world, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what Melody has shared, I'm going to guess most of us know when we are starting to build up, when we're ready to maybe say something we shouldn't, or do or act the way we shouldn't, to short circuit that, to stop, take a breath, to maybe say a prayer for a moment, or Have you been able to ever do that? Is that part of something you would normally do or would like to do?
I did a lot.
You did a lot. Yeah, Carl?
So I worked in financial aid
Mhm.
way back in history, and it had interviews and conversations with new parents and students coming in, and I'd hear the same questions over and over, and it was frustrating, and like, I have to do this again. And then I'm not sure what it was that made me stop, and then I said, I've heard this 100 times, but they are only asking it once.
Yeah.
So going back and recognizing that I don't need to be a patient. I know the answer. I can give it to them clearly. This is the first time they've ever been in this situation. So moving it
Mhm.
in that way.
And that's great, because some of you may have been in professions. Well, I know, Andrea, you would have been in your former job, you would be dealing with people who you encounter at the border. And for most of those people, it's the first time that they are, let's say, trying to get in the country or trying to deal with whatever in terms of immigration or migrant or status of some kind. Did you ever experience what Carla was just saying? Like it's like the 10,000th time you've heard this or have encountered this situation, but for them, that person or persons, it's their first time, and their fears and worries and concerns and anything like that.
Actually, with the migrant people, it was more like there was a lot of, for my part, I felt I had empathy for them. So I think that's probably when I instilled more patience, especially if it was children. Where I did lose my patience was with the U.S. citizens that didn't want to wait in line and couldn't understand why they couldn't come up to the front. Those were the ones I lost my patience with. So,
I bet.
but I would just explain to them, well, this is the way it is. There's only so many people working at the border, and there's so many people coming. So whether it's, whether we have to process the migrants or people just tourism, it's just the way it is. You chose to go, you have to anticipate that you're going to have to wait, in order for us to do our job. And I would lose patience with people thinking, well, why are you checking on me? Well, because I don't know who you are. Like, you might appear to be, a decent person or whatever, but you could also be somebody who's smuggling something that's, some type of contraband. Maybe you know about it, maybe you don't. But, you just need to expect that. That would be my message to them. The next time you come, just expect that, and plan accordingly.
Right.
Some days you'll cross with no big deal, fast, whatever, and other times there might be, you don't know what intel we've gotten that might say, okay, there's, this vehicle's suspect, or
Right.
this person's suspect, so we're going to be searching for that. So, yeah, that's where I was most of my patience, with people who had more privileged and had that attitude as though you work for me.
So the privileged attitude and you work for me.
Right, yeah.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yep.
My response to that went, and you pay me to do what I'm doing right now.
Exactly. Well, that's right. If they want safety at the border, they can't have it both. They can't have it the way they
Right.
want things to be. There's a certain way it has to be. Right.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to share, like in terms of what Melody shared? Is there a way that you have that when you're feeling that bubbling up in you? What do you do to sort of settle it down a bit, to give you a little more of the patience so that you don't just react, to have a little more tolerance? I love the part about the empathy. Empathy, when you have empathy, it changes the circumstance, and it helps with that patience. You know, Carla?
So when my kids were little, we would play what if, and a lot of it was for emergency situations. What if the stove is on fire? What if? But I'd also talk about what if you run into someone that looks different from you for some reason, and we talk about why. Why might they be different? You know, maybe they're overweight. I said, but that could be, maybe they do eat too much, but not necessarily. They may be on medication, or they may be, so looking at the what ifs, rather than just
The what
the
ifs.
straight what you see.
Yeah. So the what ifs. Oops. What ifs? Okay.
And
Yeah.
I'm beginning to wonder, sorry, I'm beginning to wonder, what's the value of expectations as a, you know, we think of our society, that you need to have a functioning society, and I think now we have so much kind of this sense of privilege, entitlement, intolerance, you know, and now I just want to cry. So when you see that all around the world, where that's what you see and you're experiencing, to not also become a part of that. And that's where I see where I did the other day, and I became part of that, not caring about other people, you know. And it's somehow we can come to the place where I love that empathy, where we can see, when we can see God in every being, and just trust that, you know, I don't know. I'm wondering now, because I'm feeling very emotional, but it's about expectation and how to let go of your expectations of people when expectations are really destroying the world as we know it.
So that's a good question. So how do we let go of our expectations? And it's okay to have expectations.
Sure.
But when expectations may get in the way of relationships or healing or peace or generosity, you know, or whatever it is that we want to sort of, again, cultivate within our lives, how do we let go of that? Anyone? Any thoughts? Okay. Well, we'll just leave that. Let's leave that. Well, let's. I want to jump up now as the time goes on here, and we can talk about: is there anything from the Holy Week reflections? The Holy Week reflections, which begin with Palm Sunday on page 59. Page 59, and then spread out through the Holy Week. So we have love cast out fear on Palm Sunday. Monday's walking the way of love. Tuesday is in his steps. Wednesday, the power of love. Monday, Thursday, love has a look. And Friday, love's tenacity. And the Saturday, Holy Saturday, is one of those times where it's truly an in-between time, where you have to wait between crucifixion and resurrection. And it's that quiet sort of time. Anything in your reflections, comments, things that you've noted that you would like to talk about from the Holy Week reflections?
I don't know if it's the particular things you're saying, but reading it brought up, that's what usually happens with these books, brings up old memories to me. And if you don't mind me telling a little story. Okay. It brought up a memory from years ago. I was maybe about 40. I had this dream one night, and it was not anywhere near Easter time. I don't know what brought it on, but I realized when I woke up in the middle of the night, I felt like I was glowing, and I felt like this was very special. So, and I know how when you wake up, usually your dreams fade away, so I sat in the middle of the night on the edge of the bed trying to recall the dream, and even as I did it, pieces fell away. But I remembered three main pieces. One was I was driving north on the Pennsylvania Turnpike toward the Pocono Mountains to see the colored leaves, and I went through the Lehigh Tunnel, and usually when you come out, that's where you see the mountains and the brightly colored leaves. But in this dream, I came out in a little strange town that I had never been to before. And I noticed that people were lined up along the street, and they were wearing costumes like you would see in the movie The Ten Commandments, like from the old Bible days. And then I noticed they were waving palm branches. So I realized, oh, they're celebrating Jesus' triumphal entrance into Jerusalem. So I pulled over to the curb, but I didn't get out of the car, and I saw about 2 blocks down, there was a man on a donkey. But because it was the 20th century, there was a marching band behind him. So I figured, I know what this is about. I don't need to sit here. I don't want to get stuck in the crowd when this breaks up. I'm going to leave. So I go back to go into the tunnel, and I realized the first tunnel entrance was where I just came out. So I pulled into the second tunnel entrance, and I made a big mistake. It was unfinished. It was pitch black except for the car headlights. It was barely wide enough for the car to fit through. It was unpaved, curves, jagged rocks sticking out of the wall. And I was really scared. I didn't know what to do. And then a man popped up in the back seat of my car, and I figured, oh, I'm going to get robbed. When I pulled over to the curb at the parade, he must have snuck into the back of the car. And I couldn't open the door to get out because the tunnel was so tight, there was no room. The man was in the back seat, but he went right behind me, and then he put his arm over my shoulder and took hold of the steering wheel. And as he did so, his sleeve touched my shoulder, and it was like a lightning bolt went through me. And I realized it was Jesus himself. He took hold of the wheel to guide me through this tunnel. The next thing I remembered, you're going to laugh, I was driving into the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. by myself, and if you've been there, you know you can't drive into the Capitol building. I was in the statuary hall, and I saw this bright curtain, white, but shining white curtain from the dome ceiling all the way to the floor. And I was curious what it was, so I got out of the car and walked over and parted the curtain. It was the church of my youth, and it was empty, but I realized that it was Easter Sunday morning because there were Easter lilies on the altar. And just then 2 little acolytes came out and were lighting the candles. That was all that I remembered. But as I sat on the bed reflecting on it, trying to understand what this is about, I realized we had Good Friday, and the tunnel was Good Friday. We had Palm Sunday, and then Good Friday was my Good Friday. It was my unfinished life. I was being told it would be difficult at times, rocky, hard to navigate, but that Jesus would be with me throughout it to guide me through this tunnel of my life, and I would make it to my resurrection day. And I don't know what brought this on, how or why, but I think it was a message to me from God.
That's beautiful. Question. We've all come through Holy Week, and it's been an extra week since that. The story that Julie just shared, she saw herself in that. How many of you were able to get to some of the Holy Week services? Anybody? Okay. How does Holy Week, using Julie, thank you for the springboarding that, how does Holy Week for you touch your life? How did you see any of yourself in that walking from the triumphal entrance until Easter morning? And with that question, I'm going to ask, where are you? So we're going to, Holy Week, it's only once a year, but our lives are forever, right? As far. Where are you in Holy Week in terms of yourself? Are you in the celebration moment of Palm Sunday? Are you at the Last Supper? experiencing the last moments with Jesus? Are you at the cross? Is your life a moment right now where you are experiencing the cross of Christ in your life? And that, or the darkness beyond that. So what I want you to do is take a few minutes, okay? Take a few minutes. And of course, we don't record what you're saying when you're talking in a group. And take this time to maybe find yourself in Holy Week. Where are you? At this time in your life, are you on the Sunday, Palm Sunday? Are you on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and so on? Where do you see yourselves right now? And and we'll just leave it at that. So where do you see yourselves right now in terms of Holy Week? Let's go back. So, who is relating to Palm Sunday and the triumphal entrance, the celebration? Anybody? Okay. Now, I just broke this up into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I also included the Seder meal, which is something we add. It's not part of Holy Week per se, but anyone from the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, just hands.
We think
Okay.
it's starting to build.
So there's John, Joyce,
And
Carla. Okay. What about Monday, Thursday? Okay. Good Friday?
I'm still stuck in that tunnel sometimes.
Okay. Holy Saturday and the Vigil? Another Joyce. Okay. Oh, both Joyces. Okay. Okay. At Easter. Okay. Now, question is why? So what was it about the Wednesday, it was the Seder you mentioned. What was it about the Seder that you saw yourself as far as, where you're kind of at right now? What was it about that?
For me, it was like seeing the positive, and things were going great, or seemingly, and not anticipating, even though I knew what was going to come, not looking at that,
Right.
just being in the moment.
And the thing about the Seder meal, of course, it's talking about the Exodus, long before Jesus. We're talking like 1,200 years, 1,250 years or so before Jesus. But it talks about power, deliverance, redemption, hope, all the things that we talk about in terms of our Christian faith. But holding within that moment, knowing this is still coming, right? Yeah, John?
We really enjoyed the Seder because it takes you back to the Passover and the time of Christ and puts you in his situation as then things progress thereafter. But there's also something I read that occurred during Holy Week that I thought really ties up the whole meaning of what we have been doing, and that's the expression of compassion. And my illustration is this. In the early morning hours of Palm Sunday, Pennsylvania Governor Shapiro's home was attacked by an arsonist. And this was just after they had celebrated their Seder supper. Extensive damage, etc. Well, last Sunday he wrote an editorial. And in that editorial he related that he received a letter from the chaplain of the fire department to put out the fire, and was signed by all the firemen. And they wrote on the back of it the following: "The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. And here we have the Christian and Jewish coming together. And I think that's what the Seder also represents.
Thank you.
That was powerful.
Oh, of course.
Monday, Thursday. So Andrea and Clarissa, you related something about that in your current life, current situation. What is it about the Monday, Thursday experience that you see yourself either continuing feeling that way, or at that moment it triggered something?
So I feel like I am in Maundy Thursday because, like I was sharing with the group, I've had a lot of conflict with different people, family, and just people that have come into my life, people I've known for a long time. And I just kind of see myself the way that, because what I feel now today in this moment is not necessarily how they say, if you're having conflict in all these places, you should look at yourself, because maybe I'm the common denominator, right? So, but I kind of just view that as the way that Jesus was accepting of and washing people's feet and just being as a servant to them, even the ones that he knew was going to betray him, even though that he knew that he was going to suffer so greatly for all of these people. And I just imagine there being this calmness and this acceptance. And so I feel like that's where I'm at, where I'm like, I don't know, something's got to come from this. And hopefully it's that I will change in this process if I'm willing to change, and kind of not transform from the person who's always been avoidant of conflict to a brand new person who knows how to handle conflict gracefully, so that I don't keep running from it and just kind of be stuck in that old life. So that's why I feel like I'm in Maundy Thursday.
I just was able to identify on page 64, which is Monday, Thursday, the last sentence on the first paragraph. It says, expressing love to those around us involves time, effort, and sometimes inconvenience. And, through the things that are going on in my family right now, I touch back on that. There's times where your love for your family and your relationships, you have to have, and patience and tolerance and understanding and all the things that Hollywood has gone through. And sometimes it is inconvenient, and you do have to spend time, and it doesn't necessarily involve you, but you're a part of it.
Yeah.
So.
And just in case those online didn't hear, the line that Andrea just mentioned says that expressing love to those around us involves time, effort, and sometimes inconvenience. Now, that's, yeah. I mean, think about if you're raising children, all that's in there too, or just relationships in general. Relationships, working together, does involve time, effort, and sometimes inconvenience. And sometimes the inconvenience sort of reflects back on us because we might be the issue. It's not always the other person or the situation. Good Friday, John and Julie.
I sort of just feel like I'm stuck in that tunnel that I dreamt about.
Right.
And I have to deal on a daily basis. I live with somebody who's handicapped, who's getting worse, both mentally and physically. And it's just an endless daily battle that I try really hard to keep my patience. And I don't always succeed. And it just seems like an endless dark spot.
Thank you for sharing that. John?
Well, with Good Friday, the solemnity of it, it brings to focus on death And you can be anticipatory knowing that that's not the final word. But at that point, you're focusing on the significance of, of death and the hope of our own release from it. That's what I see.
Yeah, I mean, both the image of death or the darkness of that tunnel, as Judy talked about. It's hard when you go through Holy Week, we kind of know we look to the back of the book. We know the story. We know that's coming, right? But for many people, they're stuck in this. And they don't know how to get out of that.
Right.
Yet, this is a time of grace. Definitely needs patience and courage. But to know with our faith that when we experience a Good Friday, we're not experiencing it alone. Christ is there with us in that tunnel, in that darkness, in the grief, in the anger, in the hurt, in the sorrow, all the many, many, many emotions that go through this. It's sometimes hard to look past that and jump to that. And people without faith, everyone is in a different place in terms of themselves. And not everyone believes in God. Not everyone believes in Jesus. And even those who do believe, sometimes the Good Friday can be so dark that they don't always feel Christ's presence there. But faith calls us to hold on to Jesus even when we don't feel he's there. He is there. But it's hard to work through that, especially when something is very raw and very fresh, and you just got that phone call, or something happened, or you lost your job, or the relationship of 30-something years breaks up, or whatever it is. It can be tough,
In some Good Friday services, at the end of the service, there is a slamming, like slamming of a door, but it's supposed to represent the slamming of or closing of the stone in front of the tomb. And the finality of that at the end of the service really brings home the significance of Good Friday and the hope that comes, that you anticipate.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments on that? Not? What about Holy Saturday or Easter Vigil? So it goes from the silence, the waiting, the tradition of Jesus ascending to the dead, to bring back with him those who had died prior to coming to earth. Then the vigil, the celebration, the lighting of the fire. Very different parts of the Saturday. Joyce?
I was an usher on Maundy Thursday, and so when I was sitting in back of the church and saw the altar being stripped, and I have to say it is a very emotional thing. And then you go through Good Friday. So on Saturday, there is that transition, which I like, which starts out dark. And I like hearing right from the beginning of your faith, the creation, the children of Israel going through the Red Sea and Passover. And then I like the affirmation of our baptismal vows. And you hear yourself saying, this is what I believe. And it just brings everything just so emotionally home. And then right at that point, it's like Christ is risen, because it did happen late in the morning, because I guess it says in Scripture it was still dark. That's, I grew up Catholic, and they did have Easter Vigil, and I went a couple of times as a Catholic, and then I spent my whole adult life basically in Presbyterian churches that didn't have Easter Vigil. So when I came here to visit, I guess it was in 2019, Easter Vigil, I thought, wow, here's Easter Vigil. So I went to it, and it's one of to me, it's a highlight of the year for me. Even though I was saying to everyone, as a Christian, the resurrection, the crucifixion and the resurrection and all that is just a part of everyday existence as a Christian. But this particular day is just neat because you're going from darkness to the light of the resurrection.
Yeah. The drama of Holy Week, the movement we go through, it's so emotional. It touches us on many levels, visually, physically, again, emotionally, from celebration to celebration. But a lot of us spend our lives in this, with just brief moments of that. But within that, we always need to remember the celebration and the hope and power of Easter is always there. But when we're in the dark tunnel of the Good Friday or at the cross, we don't always feel that. So Holy Week really is our lives. We go from celebration to conflict, to anger, to pain, rejection, back to celebration, and it's this constant cycle. But to remember, even though it might be really, really hard, when we're in these moments of Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter's still there. And every Sunday actually is a little Easter. That's why through Lent, the 40 days of Lent don't count Sunday. Sundays are counted as little Easters. So it's more than 40 days in Lent as a result of that. So it's something just to hold on to, that image. Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Oh, go.
Well, that is my point exactly. This discussion right now, I love how this works, actually ties in and helps me get clarification about what we talked about in the first part.
Right.
And I realize now, just now, that I'm really in the very early morning, early stage. It's still dark on Holy Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And I realize that it's this, the way I feel it is like, because of the world where you feel like there's been a crucifixion of everything that I feel like Jesus meant, about generosity and love and tolerance and doing good to others, and that all of that is just being destroyed. I mean, it's just, I feel it just, and so I feel this incredible grief where, basically we have an administration where the point of everything is just to be brutal. I mean, and to take away from, the poor and it just, and I feel like I'm just at this place where I'm just in grief. I feel like I've seen all of this shattering and loss, but there's still, there's hope. You're holding on to hope.
There's still hope, yeah.
And that you're very prayerful, and you feel like. So I just feel like if I were, if I were a disciple that day, I could feel where I would be at that early darkness, of almost in despair and grief of loss,
yeah.
And that, well, maybe, and so you have to. It's a place of real work.
Yes.
I think it's the hardest work.
Yes. Yeah.
At this very place,
Yeah.
is to not succumb, but to be in hope and then to make hope into action,
Well, very well said, yeah. Any other comments on this? Joyce?
I would share briefly. of what happened Holy Saturday, because I was still in the rehab place, and there were 4 of us that always ate together, and I had this book with me. And the subject came up, why is there a special day in Lent between Good Friday and Easter? And I said, give me a few minutes, or give me a little time, and I'll come back on when we have lunch, because we're having breakfast during that conversation, and try to explain Holy Saturday to you. And so once again, I was teaching, and I did it from this book, and we talked about what Holy Saturday is. Some people had never heard about it,
Right.
and they'd never knew that it had a name, that it was just maybe a quiet day. And so this book became a teacher to them. So I was very glad I could share it. And obviously, I'm going to go to the next one. I am at my very, very happy Easter.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we've done our own journey the last 7 weeks, I guess, at this point. And we continue to work on cultivating some of the fruits of the Spirit that we shared about faithfulness, peace, joy, generosity, and patience, and walking the way of love, the Holy Week experience. And we will continue to do this. The one thing about a study like that we've gone through, yes, we do have a booklet. You have something you could go back to and reference. It's a wonderful, it is a reference for us. It has prayers, it has scripture, it has the reflections. And you may find, some point in a few months or in another year or so, you may go, gosh, I'm really trying to develop patience in my life, and it gives you a chance to go back. So don't get rid of these books. They're really good to have, to reference little stories, the reflections, to hold on to as you alternate through the Holy Week experience in your life. Okay. Anything you wanted to share at all from some of these topics from the last several weeks? Was there something that you feel you never had a chance to comment on, or since you've been going through the study, it's now sort of sparking something with you? Anybody? Anybody at all? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
And we're just going to leave it at that. We'll finish with a prayer. And thank you, everyone, for being part of the study. You have enriched each other. You have enriched me, and those online, I'm sure. And just continue to do the process of a daily prayer, even if it's 5 minutes, a little reflection. We have the forward day-by-day little booklets we always provide for free. They come out, and they're in quarterly dates.
Are they on?
Yep. We used to. For example, there should be some in the office. So this was February, March, April, and there'll be the May, June, July one. Short, very similar, short little reflections. Take the time. Don't stop doing that. If it's been good for you to step outside of the busyness and the craziness for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, whatever has been your practice, continue to do it. And whether it's something like that or a Bible verse of the day, just a chance to just pray it, reflect on it. Try to keep that going, because that helps nourish you to deal with the ups and downs of life. Okay? Well, let's finish with a prayer. And this one is from some of you know, Stephen Charleston. I think he's a Native American minister. The mystery will not be solved. The power of the mystery will not be denied. For the transcendent presence of the Holy surrounds us, will always surround us, and the greatness of the Spirit will endure forever. Be not afraid or anxious. The threshold on which you stand is the mystery of an infinite love, and an intimate love, a love that beckons you into its peace, that welcomes you with a limitless compassion. Be not afraid or anxious. Close your eyes, open your heart,